Welcome back to HOA Meltdown Moments. The snow was not the problem, the HOA was. She is standing in my driveway at 6:45 in the morning, red earmuffs framing her furious face, screaming that the snow service van parked at the curb is an unapproved vendor and she has already called the tow company. I am holding a coffee mug in one hand and my phone in the other, recording every word, because Jennifer Morgan does not bluff and she does not back down. She is the vice president of the Preserve at Frostwood Property Owners Association, and she has turned snow enforcement into a personal crusade. The van belongs to the contractor I hired to clear my driveway after the blizzard dumped 14 inches overnight, and it is parked illegally on the public street, not on HOA property. I tell her that, calmly, and she cuts me off. "You do not get to decide what is legal," she says. "I decide what violates community standards, and that van is unapproved. I work for Denver City Parks, so I know permits and right-of-way rules backward, and I know she is wrong." But Jennifer does not care about being wrong. She cares about being in charge. I moved to Denver 2 years ago for the parks job, and I bought a townhouse in Frostwood because the commute was easy and the neighborhood looked quiet. The Preserve at Frostwood Property Owners Association has 73 homes, all cookie-cutter layouts with tiny front yards and shared snow removal for the main roads. The HOA is supposed to handle the loop road and the footbridge, but everything else is on the homeowner. That includes your driveway, your walkway, and the curb cut, where the plow leaves a frozen ridge every time it passes. Miss the 24-hour clear deadline after a storm, and you get a violation notice. Miss 2, and you get a hearing. Miss 3, and they can lien your house. I have been trying to refinance for 6 months, and any lien threat could wreck the deal. The interest rate I locked depends on a clean title, and Jennifer knows it because she sits on the finance committee and has access to every homeowner file. She has been targeting me since October, when I pushed back on a landscaping fine that made no sense. Now it is January, and the neighborhood portal is full of icy sidewalk photos and accusations, most of them posted by Jennifer or her 2 allies on the board. The first sign of trouble was a violation notice 3 weeks ago. I had cleared my driveway within 12 hours of the storm, but Jennifer claimed I left a snow pile blocking the drainage swale. The photo she submitted showed a small mound near the curb, which is exactly where every plow in the city dumps overflow. I wrote a response explaining that the pile was plow residue, not my doing, and I attached photos with timestamps. She escalated it to a hearing anyway. The hearing was scheduled for last Tuesday, but a second blizzard hit Monday night and the board canceled. Jennifer sent an email saying the cancellation did not pause the compliance clock, and I had 24 hours to cure the original violation or face a $500 fine. The email read like a ransom note, all caps subject line and bolded deadlines, and it made no sense because the new snow had buried the original pile. I ignored it and focused on clearing my driveway again, which is why I hired the contractor. Now Jennifer is telling me the contractor is illegal and she has a tow truck on the way. I ask her to show me the rule. She pulls out a tow yard claim ticket booklet and flips through it, not looking at me, and says the rule is enforcement discretion and she does not need to show me anything. I ask her if she has authorization to call a tow on a public street. She says, "We can tow first and explain later. That is how enforcement works." I let her say my name loud, because later I wanted it on the recording. She says it twice, pointing at me with the booklet, her voice echoing off the snowbanks. The contractor steps out of his van, looking confused, and Jennifer rounds on him. She demands his business license, his insurance cert, and proof of HOA vendor approval. He has the first 2, but not the third, because there is no such thing as HOA vendor approval for private work on private property. He looks at me. I tell him to ignore her and finish the job. Jennifer loses it. She gets on her phone and I hear her say, "Yes. Still at the same address, gray service van, Wisconsin plates, send the truck now." The contractor shakes his head and starts packing his tools. He is not sticking around for this, and I do not blame him. I tell him I will pay him for the trip, and he nods and drives off. Jennifer watches him go with a smug little smile, and then she turns back to me. "You have 24 hours to clear that driveway, by hand if you have to," she says. The cure deadline stands. I do not care what the weather did, I care what the rule says. Then she walks back to her own townhouse, 3 doors down, earmuffs bobbing, boots crunching through the snow. I go inside and call my attorney. She is a real estate lawyer I hired during the refinance process, and she has seen HOA abuse before. I explain what just happened. She tells me Jennifer does not have the authority to authorize a tow on a public street, period. If the tow company shows up and hooks the van, it is an illegal tow, and Jennifer is personally liable. But the van is already gone, so the question is whether she will keep escalating. She will, I say. She always does. My attorney tells me to document everything, get witness statements if I can, and file a complaint with the management company. The preserve contracts with a third-party manager for finances and enforcement, but Jennifer has been ignoring their advice for months. The manager is a guy named Eric, and he is scared of Jennifer because she controls 2 other board votes. I have emailed him 4 times about the drainage swale dispute, and he has responded with variations of "I will look into it." I spend the rest of the morning clearing my driveway by hand. It takes 3 hours because the snow is heavy and wet, and the plow has already come through twice, piling more frozen chunks at the curb. Every time I think I am done, I find another ridge. By noon, my back is screaming and my gloves are soaked through. I take photos of the cleared driveway, the timestamp, and the street sign for proof. Then I upload everything to the HOA portal with a note that the work is complete and the violation is cured. Jennifer replies within 10 minutes. She says the cure is insufficient because I did not remove the snow pile in the drainage swale. I look at the photo she attached. It is the same photo from 3 weeks ago, before the second blizzard, and she is trying to pass it off as current. I reply and point that out, attaching my time-stamped photos. She does not respond, but an hour later, I get an email from Eric, the manager, saying the board has scheduled a forced photo inspection for tomorrow morning at 8. Forced photo inspections are Jennifer's favorite tactic. She demands close-up pictures of your property on a tight deadline, and if you miss the window or the photos do not match her expectations, she writes you up for non-compliance. The email does not say what they are inspecting or what standard I am supposed to meet. It just says, "Be available at 8 a.m. for photographic documentation of drainage compliance." I call Eric. He sounds tired. He tells me Jennifer added the inspection to the enforcement calendar last night, and he cannot cancel it without a board vote. I ask him if the inspection is even legal. He says it is in the bylaws under emergency safety provisions, and Jennifer has declared snow and ice a community emergency. I ask him what happens if I refuse. He says Jennifer will fine me for obstruction and escalate to a lien hearing. I hang up and start going through the HOA documents. I have a full copy of the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, plus the enforcement policy and the emergency procedures. The emergency provision allows the board to inspect common areas and shared infrastructure, but it does not give them the right to force entry onto private property without 72 hours notice, unless there is an immediate threat to life or safety. A 3-week-old snow pile does not qualify. I email Eric back with the relevant section highlighted and copied. I tell him I will not obstruct a legal inspection, but I will not allow an illegal one either, and if Jennifer shows up tomorrow without proper notice, I will treat it as trespassing. I copy my attorney. Eric does not reply. That night, I get a message from my neighbor 2 doors down. Her name is Claire, and she is quiet, keeps to herself, but she has been watching the HOA drama unfold on the portal. She tells me she saved screenshots of Jennifer's posts and messages, including one where Jennifer admitted she is targeting me because I filed a complaint about her landscaping enforcement last fall. Claire sends me the screenshots. In one message, Jennifer tells another board member, "He thinks he can embarrass me in front of the membership, so now I am going to make his life hell until he sells." I forward the screenshots to my attorney. She replies immediately. "This is gold," she says. "If Jennifer is using her board position for personal retaliation, that is a breach of fiduciary duty and possibly harassment. We can use this if it goes to a hearing or a lawsuit. But the better play is to force the board to follow their own rules and let Jennifer hang herself." The next morning at 7:55, I am standing in my front yard with my phone recording. Jennifer arrives at exactly 8, flanked by another board member, a man named Todd who nods at everything she says. She is holding a clipboard with a violation notice on it. No readable text, just a form with checkboxes. She does not say good morning. She says, "We are here for the drainage inspection." Step aside. I tell her I did not receive 72 hours notice, and the emergency provision does not apply. She says, "I do not care what the weather did, I care what the rule says." This is her catchphrase, and she has said it twice now in 2 days. I let her repeat it because it is going on the recording. Todd shifts his weight and looks uncomfortable. I ask him if he reviewed the enforcement policy before coming here. He does not answer. Jennifer steps forward, holding up the clipboard. She says, "You are obstructing an official inspection. That is a separate violation. I am adding it to your file right now." I hold up my phone. I say, "I am recording this. You do not have proper notice, you do not have an emergency, and you do not have authority to enter my property. If you proceed, I will file a police report for trespassing." Jennifer's face goes red. She says, "You do not get to threaten me." I say, "I am not threatening you. I am informing you of the law." Todd clears his throat. He says, "Maybe we should reschedule." Jennifer snaps at him. She says, "We are not rescheduling." He caved, and now he is trying to weasel out of compliance. I look at Todd and say, "You are a witness to this. If she files a false violation, you are complicit." Todd takes a step back. Jennifer is shaking now, her breath coming out in angry clouds. She says, "Fine. We will add this to the hearing. You have 72 hours to clear the drainage swale to HOA standards, or we move to fine and lien." Then she turns and walks away, Todd trailing behind her. I email the video to my attorney and to Eric. My attorney says we now have evidence of intimidation and improper procedure. Eric does not reply. That afternoon, I get a notice that a vendor has been dispatched to my property under a safety authorization. The notice does not say what vendor or what work. It just says, "A contracted service provider will access your property tomorrow between 9 and noon to remediate a community safety hazard. Do not obstruct." I call Eric. He sounds even more tired than before. He says Jennifer authorized a drainage contractor to clear the swale and bill me for the work. I ask him how she can authorize work on my property without my consent. He says the safety provision allows the HOA to remediate hazards and charge the homeowner. I ask him what the hazard is. He says standing water risk when the snow melts. It is January. The snow is not melting. Nothing is melting. It is 12 degrees outside. I tell Eric this is insane, and he says, "I know, but I cannot stop her without a board vote, and she has the votes." I ask him if he is willing to go on record saying this is improper. He hesitates, then says off the record yes. On the record, I cannot. I will lose my contract. I hang up and call my attorney again. She tells me to refuse access and document the refusal. If the vendor shows up, I should tell them I did not authorize the work and I will not pay for it. If they proceed anyway, I should call the police and report it as trespassing and vandalism. She says Jennifer is trying to create a paper trail that makes me look uncooperative so she can justify the lien. The vendor shows up the next morning in a white pickup truck with a plow blade and a salt spreader. He is a contractor I have never seen before, and he has a work order with my address on it. I meet him in the driveway and explain that I did not authorize this work and the HOA does not have the right to send him. He shows me the work order. It is signed by Jennifer, and it says, "Clear drainage swale per emergency safety authorization." I tell him I will not pay for work I did not request. He shrugs and says he gets paid by the HOA either way, but if I refuse access, he has to note it on the report. I say note it. He takes a photo of me standing in the driveway, gets back in his truck, and leaves. 10 minutes later, I get an email from Jennifer saying I obstructed emergency safety work, and I am being fined $250 for non-compliance. That is when I realize Jennifer is not trying to enforce the rules. She is trying to force me out. The refinance is supposed to close in 3 weeks, and if she can get a lien filed before then, the deal dies. I will lose the rate lock, and I will be stuck with the current loan, which is bleeding me dry. She knows this because she has access to the homeowner files, and she is using it as leverage. I start building my case. I have the recordings, the screenshots from Claire, the emails, the work orders, and the timeline. I also have the enforcement policy, which clearly states that any tow authorization requires written approval from 2 board members and documentation of the violation. Jennifer authorized the tow on her own without the second signature, and she never documented the violation beforehand. That is a policy violation, and it is proof she is skipping required steps on purpose. But I need more. I need proof that the tow company never should have responded to her call in the first place. I call the tow company and ask for a copy of the dispatch log. The dispatcher is reluctant, but I explain that I am gathering evidence for a legal dispute and I will subpoena the records if necessary. He puts me on hold, then comes back and says he can email me the log if I provide a case number. I do not have a case number yet, but I tell him I will get one and call back. I call the non-emergency police line and explain the situation. The officer who answers is skeptical at first, but when I mention that the HOA vice president authorized a tow on a public street without authority, he perks up. He says that could be filing a false report or abuse of process, depending on what the tow company was told. He takes my information and gives me an incident number. I call the tow company back with the number, and they email me the log. The log shows that Jennifer called at 6:42 a.m. and reported an abandoned vehicle blocking HOA access. That is a lie. The van was not abandoned, it was not blocking anything, and it was not on HOA property. The tow company responded because they trust HOA calls, but Jennifer gave them false information to get them out there. I forward the log to my attorney. She says this is exactly what we need. Jennifer committed fraud to initiate the tow, and that is a separate legal issue on top of the HOA abuse. The neighborhood is getting tense. The portal is full of arguments about snow enforcement, and people are taking sides. Some homeowners think Jennifer is too aggressive. Others think she is just doing her job. A few people have started posting photos of their own cleared driveways with sarcastic captions like, "Hope this meets HOA standards." Jennifer responds to every post with rule citations and warnings about non-compliance. Claire messages me again. She says a group of neighbors is talking about calling a special meeting to vote on new enforcement procedures, but they need a petition with 20% of homeowners to trigger it. That is 15 signatures. She says she will help me collect them if I want to push it. I tell her yes, and she starts reaching out quietly. Meanwhile, Jennifer escalates again. I get an email saying the HOA has scheduled a lien hearing for next Thursday. The email lists 4 violations: failure to clear drainage swale, obstruction of emergency inspection, obstruction of emergency remediation, and unapproved vendor activity. The total fines are $850, and if I do not pay within 10 days, the HOA will file a lien. I forward the email to my attorney. She says we need to act fast. She drafts a response demanding that the hearing be postponed until the board provides documentation of proper authorization for the tow, the inspection, and the remediation work. She also demands a copy of the call recording from the tow company and a breakdown of how the fines were calculated. We send it to Eric and copy the entire board. Eric replies the next day. He says the board has agreed to postpone the hearing by 1 week to allow time for document review, but the fines stand pending the hearing. My attorney is not satisfied. She files a formal complaint with the Colorado Division of Real Estate, which oversees HOA management companies, alleging that Eric failed to prevent board misconduct. She also sends a demand letter to Jennifer personally, notifying her that we have evidence of fraud, harassment, and breach of fiduciary duty, and if she does not retract the violations, we will file a lawsuit. Jennifer does not retract anything. Instead, she doubles down. She posts on the portal that I am a problem homeowner who refuses to follow basic safety rules, and she implies that I am putting the neighborhood at risk. She does not name me directly, but everyone knows who she is talking about. The post gets 17 comments, most of them supportive of her, a few pushing back. Claire messages me with good news. She has 12 signatures on the petition, and she thinks she can get the last 3 by the weekend. The petition calls for a special meeting to vote on amending the enforcement policy to require 2-member approval for all fines and tows, written notice before forced inspections, and a transparent appeals process. If it passes, it will strip Jennifer of most of her unilateral power. If you are enjoying this story, please hit the like button and subscribe for more HOA chaos. The weekend brings another storm, this one dropping 8 inches in 12 hours. The plows come through and leave the usual ridge at the curb. I clear my driveway and walkway by 10 a.m., take photos, and upload them to the portal. Jennifer does not respond. Instead, she posts a new notice saying the board has declared a snow emergency and all homeowners are required to submit photographic proof of compliance by 5 p.m. or face automatic fines. The notice causes an uproar. People start posting photos in a flood, some with timestamps, some without, some with sarcastic captions. One guy posts a photo of his driveway with the caption, "Does this count or do I need a notary?" Jennifer replies, "Sarcasm will not protect you from enforcement." By mid-afternoon, the portal is a mess. People are arguing, Jennifer is threatening, and a few homeowners are calling for her to step down. Todd, the other board member, posts a message trying to calm everyone down, but it is too late. The neighborhood is fracturing. That evening, I get a message from a neighbor I barely know. His name is Greg, and he lives on the other side of the loop. He says he was out walking his dog this morning, and he saw Jennifer doing something strange near the community footbridge. The footbridge is a wooden walkway that crosses a drainage ditch between 2 sections of the neighborhood, and it is HOA common property. Greg says Jennifer was pouring water from a jug onto the footbridge and taking photos. I ask him if he got it on video. He says yes, he was filming his dog and he caught Jennifer in the background. He sends me the clip. It is shaky and distant, but I can see her clearly. She is wearing her gray coat and red earmuffs, and she is pouring water onto the wooden planks, waiting for it to freeze, and then photographing the ice with her phone. She is staging a hazard photo. I call my attorney immediately. She watches the video and starts laughing. She says this is unbelievable. If Jennifer is fabricating evidence of hazards to justify her enforcement actions, that is fraud, and it destroys her credibility on everything else. She tells me to keep the video safe and not to share it publicly yet. We are going to use it at the hearing. The lien hearing is scheduled for Thursday at 7 p.m. in the HOA clubhouse. My attorney and I arrive early with binders full of evidence, the tow dispatch log, the call recording transcript, the screenshots from Claire, the forced inspection video, the vendor work order, and the footbridge video from Greg. We also have a copy of the enforcement policy with the sections Jennifer violated highlighted. The board is seated at a folding table at the front of the room. Jennifer is in the middle, Todd is to her left, and the third board member, a woman named Susan, is to her right. Eric, the manager, is off to the side with a laptop. There are about 20 homeowners in the audience, including Claire and Greg. Jennifer calls the meeting to order and reads the violations. She does not look at me. She just reads from her notes in a flat voice. Failure to clear drainage swale per covenant section 4.3. Obstruction of emergency inspection per enforcement policy section 2.1. Obstruction of emergency remediation per safety authorization protocol. Unapproved vendor activity per community standards section 6. My attorney stands and asks to speak. Jennifer says, "You will have your turn." My attorney says, "I am representing the homeowner, and I am objecting to these proceedings on procedural grounds. The board did not follow its own enforcement policy, and we have evidence of fraud." Jennifer's face goes tight. She says, "You do not get to object. This is an HOA hearing, not a court." My attorney says, "Fine, then let the record show that I am objecting and you are proceeding anyway." Jennifer starts presenting her case. She shows the photos of the drainage swale, the emails where I refused the inspection and the vendor, and the portal posts where I allegedly caused disruption. My attorney interrupts twice to point out inconsistencies, and Jennifer tells her to sit down. The audience is restless. A few people are whispering. Then, it is our turn. My attorney stands and projects the tow dispatch log on the screen. She walks through the timeline. At 6:42 a.m., Jennifer called the tow company and reported an abandoned vehicle blocking HOA access. The vehicle was not abandoned. It was a contractor hired by the homeowner, legally parked on a public street. The tow company responded based on false information provided by Miss Morgan. Jennifer interrupts. She says, "I had discretion to determine what constituted a violation." My attorney says, "You did not have discretion to lie to a tow company. That is filing a false report." Todd shifts in his seat. Susan is staring at the screen. My attorney continues. The enforcement policy requires 2 board members to approve any tow authorization. Miss Morgan acted alone. She also failed to document the violation before initiating the tow. Both of those are policy violations. Jennifer says the policy allows emergency action. My attorney says there was no emergency. A contractor clearing a driveway is not an emergency. Jennifer says, "I determined it was." My attorney says, "You do not have that authority." The room is silent. My attorney moves to the next slide. She shows the email chain where Jennifer authorized the forced inspection without 72 hours notice. She shows the video of Jennifer and Todd showing up at my property and me refusing entry. She plays the audio where Jennifer says, "I do not care what the weather did. I care what the rule says." Then my attorney shows the vendor work order. She explains that Jennifer authorized a contractor to enter my property and perform work I did not request, in violation of my property rights. She shows the email where Jennifer fined me for refusing the work. Susan leans over and whispers something to Todd. Todd looks uncomfortable. My attorney moves to the final piece of evidence. She says, "And now I want to show you what Miss Morgan was doing yesterday morning." She plays Greg's video. The room watches as Jennifer pours water onto the footbridge and photographs the ice. The audience gasps. Someone says, "Are you kidding me?" Jennifer stands up. She says that video is out of context. My attorney says, "What is the context for pouring water on a bridge to create a hazard you can photograph?" Jennifer does not answer. She looks at Eric. Eric is staring at his laptop. My attorney says, "Miss Morgan has been fabricating evidence, violating policy, and abusing her authority to target this homeowner for personal reasons. We have screenshots where she admitted she is retaliating because he filed a complaint last fall. This is harassment, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty." Jennifer's face is white. Todd says, "I did not know about any of this." Susan says, "I think we need to table this and get legal advice." Jennifer says, "We are not tabling anything. This homeowner is in violation and we are moving forward." Susan says, "No, we are not." The meeting devolves into chaos. Homeowners are yelling questions, Jennifer is trying to gavel them down, and Todd and Susan are arguing with each other. My attorney leans over and says, "This is going well." Eric finally speaks up. He says the board needs to vote on whether to proceed or postpone. Susan says, "I move to postpone pending a policy review." Todd says, "I second." Jennifer says, "You cannot do that without my approval." Eric says, "Actually, they can. It is a majority vote." Jennifer says, "I am the vice president." Eric says, "And they are board members. And they outvote you." Susan and Todd vote to postpone. Jennifer votes no. The motion passes. Jennifer slams the gavel and storms out of the room. The audience erupts in applause. Claire catches my eye and gives me a thumbs up. The next day, I get an email from Eric. He says the board has agreed to suspend all pending violations against me pending an independent review of the enforcement procedures. He also says Jennifer has been asked to recuse herself from any further actions related to my property. The email is formal and careful, but I can read between the lines. Jennifer is in trouble. 2 days later, Claire messages me. The petition has 18 signatures, more than enough to trigger a special meeting. She has submitted it to Eric, and he has confirmed the meeting will be scheduled within 30 days. The agenda will include a vote on the enforcement policy amendments. Jennifer tries one last move. She posts on the portal that the petition is invalid because some of the signatures were collected under false pretenses. She does not say what the false pretenses were, and no one takes her seriously. The post gets 23 comments, almost all of them calling her out. One person writes, "You lost, just accept it." The special meeting is scheduled for a Saturday morning 3 weeks later. My attorney advises me to attend, but not to speak unless necessary. Let the petition and the evidence do the work, she says. The meeting is packed. Almost 50 homeowners show up, which is unheard of for Frostwood. Claire presents the petition and explains the proposed amendments. She is calm and clear, and she does not mention Jennifer by name. She just talks about the need for checks and balances, transparency, and fairness. When she finishes, the room is quiet. Jennifer stands up. She says the amendments will cripple enforcement and turn the neighborhood into chaos. She says homeowners will ignore the rules, snow will pile up, hazards will multiply, and property values will crash. She says, "I have been protecting this community for 3 years, and this is the thanks I get." Todd stands up. He says, "I have been on the board with Jennifer for 2 years, and I have seen her do good work, but I have also seen her cross lines. The tow incident was wrong. The forced inspection was wrong. The vendor authorization was wrong. We need these amendments to make sure it does not happen again." Susan stands up. She says, "I agree. The board should not have unilateral power to fine, tow, or access private property. We need accountability." The vote is called. The amendments pass with 42 in favor, 6 against, and 2 abstentions. Jennifer votes against. Todd and Susan vote in favor. The room erupts in applause again. The fallout is swift. The following week, Eric sends an email to the full membership. The email announces that the board has voted to adopt emergency reforms requiring documented proof and 2 approvals before any tow can be ordered. The email also says the board has reviewed the recent enforcement actions and determined that several violations were issued improperly. All fines related to those violations have been canceled. I get a separate email from Eric. He says the board has asked Jennifer to issue a written retraction of the violations against me. The retraction arrives 2 days later. It is a single paragraph. It says, upon further review, the violations issued to the homeowner at my drats are retracted. The board regrets any inconvenience. It is signed by Jennifer, but I can tell someone made her write it. The HOA also sends a correction email to the full membership retracting the smear Jennifer posted on the portal. The email says, a recent post regarding a homeowner dispute contained inaccurate information. The post has been removed and the board apologizes for any confusion. Claire messages me. She says Jennifer has stopped posting on the portal and she has not been seen at any HOA events. Rumor is she is thinking about resigning. I tell Claire I will believe it when I see it. The refinance closes on schedule. The title is clean, the lien threat is gone, and I lock in the new rate. It is a huge relief. My attorney sends me a congratulations email and a bill. The bill is hefty, but it is worth it. A week after the reforms pass, I am walking to my car when I see a golf cart with a blinking amber light crawling behind the plow truck. It is early morning and the plow is clearing the loop road after a light snow. The golf cart is Todd. He waves at me. I wave back. It feels like a different neighborhood. The real payoff comes a month later. It is late February and the snow is finally starting to melt. The board schedules a regular meeting and I decide to attend. Jennifer is there, sitting in the back row instead of at the board table. She does not speak during the meeting. She does not make eye contact with anyone. When the meeting opens for homeowner comments, a neighbor stands up. She is a woman I have seen around but never talked to. She says she filed a complaint about Jennifer 6 months ago for harassment over a fence height issue, and the board never addressed it. She says she is glad the reforms passed, and she wants to know if the board will revisit old complaints that were ignored. Susan, who is now acting president, says the board will review any complaint submitted in writing. The woman nods and sits down. Jennifer stands up and walks out of the room. She does not come back. 2 weeks later, Eric sends an email announcing that Jennifer has resigned from the board effective immediately. The email does not give a reason, it just thanks her for her service and announces that the board will appoint an interim vice president until the next election. Claire messages me. She says, "We won." I reply, "You won. You got the petition going." She replies, "We all won. The neighborhood won." I see Jennifer one more time after that. It is early March and I am shoveling the last of the slush from my driveway. She drives past in her car, slow, and she looks at me. I do not wave. She does not wave. She just drives on. The new enforcement policy is working. Violations are still issued, but they come with documentation, proper notice, and a clear appeals process. Fines are rare, and tows require 2 signatures and a documented violation. The portal is quieter. People still argue about snow removal, but it is neighborly bickering, not warfare. I get my final piece of satisfaction in April. The tow company sends me a letter. It says they reviewed the dispatch logs from January and determined that the call from Jennifer was based on false information. They have issued a formal apology and they have flagged her contact information in their system. If she calls again, they will verify the complaint with a second source before responding. The letter is signed by the regional supervisor. I frame the letter and hang it in my garage. Every time I see it, I smile. The preserve at Frostwood is not perfect. The HOA still has its quirks, and the rules are still annoying. But it is livable now. The board follows procedure. Enforcement is transparent. Homeowners have a voice. I refinanced, I kept my house, and I outlasted Jennifer. That is the win. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.